Yeah, I mean, how do you want to start off?
Well, I had brought up, because it's been kind of a hot topic and like a recurring theme, the physical symptoms that people go through. And I thought
Right.
because you are somebody that's very familiar with this aspect that you would have, some really deep insight to offer.
To start, the physical interactions are also in psychiatry, in schizophrenia. I mean, just look at the list that we always talk about, right, Kevin? The possessed, demon possessed people, very physical interactions on that. We know.
Right.
Directed energy weapons or Havana syndrome, that stuff is mostly physical based. NHI contact, non-human intelligence contact. These stories, these people who tell these stories, it usually has a big physical element to it. Spiritual or Kundalini awakenings, that kind of thing, has a gigantic physical element to it. And then, of course, targeted individuals feeling like they're being hit with this V2K and these energy weapons. Targeted individuals, for whatever reason, go through these physical things as well. So, I mean, Kevin, you tell me, man, what percentage of TIs would you say experience some form of physical crazy interactions at some point in their experience? What would you
Oh,
say?
most, if not all. I still consider myself very, very blessed to not have gone through the extremes that I hear a lot of people, retelling their story. My tactile sensations went on for a period of, I want to say, heavy for about 5, maybe 6 months, and then just kind of phased off. And it was intense itch spots, and that could be anywhere, the palms of my hands, my genital area, my legs. I would get sharp pokes. In fact, I still, they're so seldom. Like I would think it was a few days ago, actually, now that I had a sharp poke on the bottom of my foot. And, to a normal person that would be listening to this, like, all right, I get sharp pains all the time. And it's different for us because you kind of develop this almost like an internal itinerary of like, the certain things that are just normal and the certain things that aren't normal. And, like the difference between the tinnitus that we hear and the tinnitus that I was used to before this started happening.
Right.
But in the very beginning, before I experienced the 24/7 voices, I was being hit with, it felt like some sort of like a vibratory thing that would go over my head and down my body. And then when it went into the full blown 24/7 voices, I would feel vibrations all over the place. And I experienced what, people would refer to as chakra openings. My forehead, my crown chakra, my chest, like all these, and it almost feels like somebody has a vibratory thumb and they're pushing it against your forehead, just, and that's what it feels like. And I would feel that on my crown chakra and on my temples. And of course, in this day and age, we're always going to, explain and determine a situation to the best of our ability with the understanding and knowledge of the current times. That's just the way that it is. Right. And so it wasn't until I began looking deeper into this phenomena and I started finding the same occurrences happening for hundreds of years, but they just had different names and labels for it back then. They used to call it chakra openings, and now it's this. And I'm confused. I'll be the first person to always say, I don't know. I still struggle with the erections, and half the time I won't even notice that it's there until it goes away and I can feel and I go, oh, I didn't even know it was up, like it's so slow. And that was rough. That was rough because I have an 18-month-old daughter at home. And so, I'm playing with my newborn baby and I'm getting these erections. So, even that, so I have to dissociate from that, from that having anything to do with my relationship with my daughter and the constant, pedophilia narrative that a lot of people struggle with.
Where I learned a lot about that was in the persistent genital arousal disorder. They're going through the same physical symptoms that I am. It is something scientifically that could be looked at, that the PGAD group is experiencing similar things to what the TI, who have the very intense physical targeting. And then what I'm learning is so many of these PGAD people and so many of these people who are being targeted all have lower back issues. Now, when you think about the lower back being in conjunction with the chakra, right? It could be that all these people who are experiencing this are experiencing a blockage down there, and maybe that's why getting in better physical condition or strengthening your back could also help, because it might be, and working on meditation and you know, that kind of thing, whatever is going to
Yeah.
help open your chakras, right?
Now, I also did experience like the throat closing up. I don't know if you've ever had that, where it feels like,
That's been a big one. That's been a huge one lately for me. It's been constant. It feels like someone is there's nothing there, nothing happening, but it feels like someone is choking me like half of my day lately. You know what I mean? Like half of my day, it feels like there's a hand choking me, cutting off my windpipe at my larynx.
oh no, you can actually feel like a physical pressure.
Yes, it
Wow.
is horrible. And it happens whenever it seems that the voices are they're getting upset, you know, and whenever they get upset, and it will cut my air off, but it will choke me. So, well, I wanted to go back, if you don't mind. I mean, what you're talking about with the vibrations, I think that's really what people should, if they're trying to understand this, they should start by thinking about these vibrations. So imagine, right, that somebody that someone talks to you in your head, and then they make a part of your body vibrate, and they talk about it while they're doing it, basically.
While they're
right?
doing it, they're talking. Can you feel that? What's that
you
feel
feel
like?
that? Yeah.
You want me to turn
And
that down? And then they'll turn it down. You want me to turn it up? I'll turn it up. Like, yeah, they're, you know, it's very bizarre when it's happening. Or like I hear a lot of people say like they feel like they're being raped, you know, and this is kind of a touchy subject for people to get into. I've never experienced that. I don't know if I believe that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the biggest problem, really, and it's one of the biggest things that we all should be having on our radar. Okay, so there's some big things that we're talking about here. The voices are the big one, right? And we all have that on our radar. Then we have synchronicity, of course, and that needs to be on our radar as well when we're trying to discern reality, right?
Right.
But another thing is the fact that there is something happening here that needs some attention. And when you look at some people look at some of our organizations, Kevin, and they go, "Oh, that's all pie in the sky, and that's all wishful thinking." And guess what? That doesn't apply to me, because my experience is actually difficult, and yours is not, right?
Right.
And here's what the deal is for me, and maybe this will help some people understand some things. It was 10 years ago that I first started hearing the voices. And before I heard the voices, I started feeling the sensations that you're talking about, right? These vibratory, energetic is what it feels like. It feels like there's an energy that is being pushed through your body that is increasing all of your energy. And so I started feeling that 10 years ago. And I started experiencing, actually, it felt like there are ghost things, ghost hands and ghost whatever, that actually start doing things to me sexually. Now, this is hard for people to talk about because we're all so scared of sex, and I am too. I don't want to talk about it either. I'm the last guy that wants to talk about this stuff. But I have been graped, as the young kids say. I have been sexually assaulted, is what it feels like to me, by unseen entities almost every single day for 10 years, and it's not stopping. Now, let me tell you, I've tried a lot of different things, and I have believed in positivity, and even because of me talking about some of our beliefs, and, you know, I believe that the power of belief is quite often what creates our reality. But so I started practicing not believing it. I started practicing knowing that I could change it and that these attacks would stop. And I started changing my life, and I changed so many factors about my life. You know, today on this camera right now, I am like 50 pounds lighter than I was the first time that you and I talked on camera. You know what I mean? Like, I have changed all these aspects of my life. Now, I don't mean to tell you that you can't improve your life by changing these aspects, because we know that it works. We've seen people improve and change their lives and reduce their TI or whatever symptoms by improving their life. And we know that it's possible, or that at least that it happens. But I would like to posit that in these discussions, it's also possible that it doesn't work for some people. And I've looked at this and I've said, well, what could I be doing that's causing my experience to be so different from everyone else's? I know I'm not a pervert. I know for a fact that I'm not a bad person. I've never been a bad person. I've made mistakes, of course, and especially when it comes to being influenced by this phenomenon. But even guys like Whitley Strieber that we talked about on the Synchronicity podcast, he talks about, they say that people use coded language like, well, it can get a little physical. It can get a little physical is code for they raped me, right? And I'm sorry to have to be so blunt about it. I don't want anyone to think that there's no hope, but I'm telling you, every single day for 10 years, I have had this happen to me. So because no one can talk about it, no one's talking about it, everyone's scared of it, there's one other factor to consider, and that is the transference of the phenomenon. Now, you know very well about this, of course, all TIs do, but when I talk about an aspect of the phenomenon for me, and you hear me talking about it, your phenomenon often will react to that, what you're taking in, right? What's being said to you, or what you're hearing, what you're seeing, your phenomenon, your experience will interact with you because of that. So if I hear someone talking about, the voices people are doing this to my genitals right now. Well, guess what the voices people do to my genitals when those people say that?
Yeah.
So the transference of phenomenon is a real thing that we almost are scared to talk about certain things because it triggers people. You know what I mean?
In fact, that recently happened to me. So two and a half months ago. Now, mind you, I had that high pitched ringing for almost 2 years. I mean, just, I'd wake up and my whole head would be ringing, just swelled with whatever that ringing is. And then I remember one day, kind of like what you were talking about, I was like, this serves no purpose whatsoever. Like, this high-pitched ringing is stupid. It serves no purpose whatsoever. I've thought about it thoroughly for almost 2 years now. I've explored every mountaintop that could possibly be explored with this thing, and I have found it thoroughly deserted. It's stupid. I'm calling bullshit on this high-pitched ringing. And Tony, it stopped. And it went away for 2.5 months. 2.5 months. I didn't have that high-pitched ringing. Well, the last podcast I did was last week on Codegas, and I told him about this, and I said, that high pitch ringing is bullshit. I said, I haven't had it now. I said, I called bullshit on it one day. It went away. I said, and now I haven't had it in 2.5 months. And sure enough, the next day it came back. Yeah. And the high pitch ringing, I had the high pitch ringing, and then it was on, and then it was off, and then then it was on.
It's like the phenomenon wants us to know, if from time to time, of course, it wants to tell us, hey, I'm still here and I'm aware of what you're doing. And I will, at times, I'll find myself going, this is impossible. It feels impossible to hold on to that thought of, as long as I don't see this as my enemy, it will not be my enemy. And as long as I don't see it as my rapist, it will not be my rapist.
Right.
I think it's hard for people to understand how difficult that thought is to maintain when something is actually physically hurting you to the point where, like we're talking about rape, right? We're right. And I know that it's, Kevin, for the audience, Kevin said to me one day, I said, how do I forgive my rapist? And he said, you're what? You're looking at it. As long as you continue to look at it that way, that's how it's going to come across. And I love that. And I love that concept, and I believe it. And I try to enact it. And then as soon as I try to enact it, I'll be sitting here at my desk working, and it will feel exactly like something shoved a giant dildo at my butt. And it hurts so bad, and it's so uncomfortable and scary. And it's like, how do I stop myself from believing that if that's what's happening? But however, we can stop seeing it as this must be my sexual assaulter, because as of right now, I can't see it as any other way, even though I admit I don't know why it's happening or where it's actually coming from, I'll
just say this for me, like something that really helped me when I was going through that 5-6 month stretch and I was getting stabbed and poked and prodded. I would say for the most part, I refuse to respond to it. If it knows it can get to you, it'll continue to get to you until it doesn't get to you anymore. Like if something continues to belittle you, it'll continue to belittle you. If something can continue to be boastful, then it'll continue to be boastful. So, but kind of eliminating both of those polarities, and releasing that expectation from it. And also is the understanding, and this is where some Eastern philosophy comes into play, is the understanding of I, this thing that we refer to as self. Really, all we are in this present moment is an accumulation of all of our memories. And that's what kind of, on all of our associations. So, I would say that in a case like yours, there's some very deep-seated, decade-long associations and a loop that's been going around and around and around, that's been solidifying a certain belief that you have towards this thing that, man, if I could help you break that loop and eliminate that association, start getting rid of some of those things. Because a lot of times, especially even when I got sober, I lived for the longest time in this haze, this alcoholic drug-induced haze, that when I got sober, I began to realize that every single emotion that I was placing on my life was the wrong emotion in the moment. It wasn't real. You know what I mean? Like driving your car, I was a meth addict. Driving your car is not meant to be experienced with the same emotion as a Rage Against the Machine concert. You're just not supposed to do that, right? So I had to go back and kind of recap my entire life and just say that wasn't real. No, that wasn't the right emotion for that scenario. I overreacted there. I did, so maybe, and I'm just offering some helpful, advice from my own experience and from how I perceive things that may help kind of clarify things in your own head. And maybe we can go back and make some reassociations in there and some healthier associations and try and push through this.
They take me through a cycle where they get me up and then they drop me down as hard as they can into hopelessness by taking over my body for days at a time and putting me on the couch where I cannot do anything. I can't work on my work. I can't socialize, and I'll be on the couch for 2 days just in so much pain and anguish and everything. And they say that they like to do that, is raise me up, get me happy and excited about life, and then see how far they can drop me down. And I think, even though it's horrible, I truly believe that there's a purpose for this, and it's making me stronger. And what you've talked about, Kevin, is that it's smashing your head into the ground over and over to make you fix your ego. And then I loved what you said in the synchronicity podcast episode, where you said that it's teaching you how to get what you came here for, which is understanding how to truly love. Yeah. And I really thought that was cool,
Yeah, and it's a love without expectation. And again, this goes back to the neither friend nor foe thing, right? So not having expectations on people, learning how to love others with, your own personal boundaries, and not expecting to be loved or appreciated back. Because I don't know, I'm not in control of other people's behaviors. What the hell? People are going to do what people are going to do. I only have control over me and my own behaviors and my output, what I put out into the world. And that all starts again up here. What am I doing with my thinking? Right. And I mention this a lot. I make posts about it frequently, and they don't ever go anywhere. I don't know if people don't take it seriously or not, but doing mantra work, it's been a miracle. It's been an absolute miracle for me to do mantra work. I mean, you got to figure you have something that is associating with your subconscious mind that's saying God knows what while you're sleeping, while you're awake. It could be calling you the biggest douchebag in the world, blah, blah. And your subconscious mind is just, it's just, okay, yeah, I'm a douchebag. But doing mantra work, saying repetitive phrases over and over and over again. I'm talking, I used to have to do them hundreds of times a day. I am enough in the present moment. I am a present sober father, and that is good enough for me. I woke up sober and I'm going to go to bed sober. Because these were important things for me. Nothing else matters in my life. You know what I mean? Nothing else matters in my life apart from being a present sober father to my daughter and being a providing, boyfriend and family member, trying to run a sensible, logical community where others are kind of coming together and learning how to push through this thing. Like, these are things that matter. So you find the things that matter, and then you create mantras around those things, and if you aren't that thing yet, then start adjusting to becoming that thing that you wish to be, and that again starts with your mind. Whether it's positive affirmations or even if it's neutral affirmations, things like I just said, I am enough. I am the right person for this job. It's okay. It is what it is. I used to say it is what it is 100 times a day, over and over and over again. It is what it is.
I guess I need to do a mantra right now that is, the attack that I'm receiving right now while we're talking, which is this some of the worst pain I've ever felt in my life, being completely honest right now. I'm going to have to do a mantra to like, hey, I am not that pain. I don't have to own that pain, but it's so anger inducing, when you, it's just, that's what's the hard part, right? Is getting rid of that anger when we feel physically attacked, because it activates the amygdala, right? Which bypasses our consciousness, goes to the subconsciousness, and it creates this fear instinct that we have to retrain, and this anger instinct that we have to retrain. But, I don't know what you think about it, but anger is useful, I think, at times, right? But the anger that I feel right now because of how I'm being hurt right now, and and this is after 10 years of really working on things and feeling like I understand and I'm doing things right. It's like, I don't understand why this would still be happening to me.
Man, I'm sorry.
I'm not trying to get a pity party going. All I am really trying to do is say, look, we can say that positivity and the positive TI training, or a 12-step method, is very helpful and very useful. The only thing is we need to figure out what to do when it doesn't work. You know what I mean? We need to figure out, for people like me, how to help these, because we've got guys in our group. We've got people in our group who come in and go, I can handle everything but these physical attacks. I don't know what to do. And we say, well, it's about perception. It's about this training yourself. And then I look at it and I go, man, I've trained myself.
I know, yeah.
Something's still happening. You know what I mean? So I don't mean to belittle anything else. I just want to make sure my experience is being recorded, and because that can help people. There are people out there right now, maybe just like I was in the beginning, who are saying, well, yeah, everybody's talking about these aspects of the TI experience, but no one's validating this thing that I'm going through. You know what I mean? That thing.
In this moment, I am grateful. I am grateful for you. I'm grateful for that's terrible, dude.
Thank you, man.
Like, I'm grateful you're speaking about this, and I'm grateful for that you're doing this while you're going through that. It says a lot about you, and I feel hopeless. I feel helpless right now. And it's making me want to come together more as a community and pray for one another, meditate with one another, because that's what we don't have. We don't have a community, and I believe heavily in the collective consciousness. I believe that there is a connection between all of us. And if there is a degree of help that I can give to you or anybody else that is suffering with this, from my own consciousness to yours, even if it's comfort, even if I could take it away from you, like, stop f***ing with him, let me share some of that, like, I'll take that.
We really do feel this way about everybody going through this. You and I both do. And that's why we take our spare time and we put it into this instead of video games. In therapy, I've been working with a little bit with the EMDR, and mostly it's just, what they're talking about is replacing these negative core beliefs.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of deprogramming, which is exactly what we're talking about. And hey, any experiencer probably sees these patterns. Once you have been doing this very long, you see the patterns that they do. You're like, oh, when they do that, it triggers that. And then now we're in this again every single time, right? And so there's no doubt that, like, finding those patterns and identifying them. And then what I've been doing, the only reason I'm still here today is because I've been building these tools in my head of, right now, I think we all naturally do this as a defense mechanism to save ourselves, but building these tools to say that helps me get over that hurdle one at a time. Before we do end up getting off here, we've talked a lot about physical stuff, and we'll talk more about it later. I do at one point want to make sure we talk about, if you're new to TIs, if you're new to experiences, if you're new to all this stuff, like, what are some basics? Like, maybe here are the main things you need to focus on if you're starting to have these weird experiences.
And this kind of goes back to the 12-step, I want to say program, but really it's more of a suggested course of action for somebody, and looking back at it now, I went with the 12 steps with that because it's what people are familiar with. They're familiar with 12-step kind of therapeutic, outlets. So I kind of went with that, and it just so happened to work out with these 12 steps. But the first one, just being able to say, I don't know, right? Like when jumping to conclusions is probably the number one thing I would tell people to do. Don't react to what you think it is, because you're going to think it's your neighbors messing with you with some sort of electronic toy. You're going to think it's your family that's setting you up. You're going to think it's some girlfriend you had a fight with. You're going to think it's, an ex-employer that you had some argument with that fired you. You're going to have all these different beliefs as to what you think it is. And just stop and really pause for a moment and think about the things that are happening to you. Could this possibly, could this really be happening from a human influence? I think is probably one of the smartest things that you can do. And don't respond to it, is probably, because that's where people get in trouble. They respond to it violently. They respond to it haphazardly in a moment of anger and hatred and rage and confusion. And then they wind up arrested or committing assault or murder or, kicking in somebody's door, or they wind up, in a psych ward. And so just, sit still, don't respond to it in the moment, reach out to somebody within the community. And I think that's number one, because the mind freaks out. You got to figure your mind has been, for your whole life, this place that has been free. You can think whatever the heck you want to think, and you're completely free of persecution and prosecution, and you can imagine whatever you want to imagine, and your thoughts are your thoughts, however perverted they are. It doesn't matter, right? And now all of a sudden, that's under threat, right? And people freak out. They completely freak out. I was listening to Myron Mays. He was a targeted individual back in 2000, and it was either 2007 or 2014. He was a lawyer, and he began feeling the electromagnetism and felt as if somebody was targeting him. And one of the things he said was he was hearing voices that were making fun of him because he was taking a bubble bath. And I guess, he had he was dealing with insecurities, or he felt violated, like his privacy was violated. And that's a big thing. You feel as if your privacy is violated. These things that you were so accustomed to doing in the privacy of your own home, all of a sudden there's no privacy. You're not showering alone. You're not pooping alone. You're not watching porn alone. Like all these things that people do, that we would normally do just in the comfort of our own home out of public eye, that goes away. That's completely eliminated. And that's a bit of an ontological shock for people, the fact that they have zero privacy at all anymore. Right. And if you cannot respond to that, right, and that takes a great deal of self-awareness and self-acceptance to get to a point where you're living a life where you don't really give a shit what other people think about you. And that took a long time for me. Like it took a long time for me to get to a point where, and it sounds disrespectful and almost arrogant to say this, and I mentioned it on my last podcast that a person really needs to get to this level is to be able to say that I'm not responsible for the version of me that exists in your mind. And Jesus is a great example of this. Listen, you can heal the blind, you can heal lepers, you can feed the thousands, you can walk on water, and people will still spit on you and hang you out to dry just because they want to hate. There's haters in the world, right? So you have to learn to be you no matter what. And this is, and for me, in my case, this has been one of the very beneficial things that happened. I was able to make that transformation with the voices. Where I just didn't give a shit. I said, you know what? I like me, who I am as a person. I like, me. I'm a good father, and I like the way that I think. I like the way that I speak. I like the way that I treat my girlfriend. Like I'm my ripples in life don't cause suffering in the lives of other people. What else do you want? What else do you want? F off. You know what I mean? So you get to a point where you're very passively just saying F off, right? Like it's not angry. I'm not bitter. They're not filled with hatred. I can say F off to the voices with the same tone as I would say, do you want to go to the grocery store? Like F off, like, it's ridiculous. So, and you almost do need to get to that point where you're completely willing to release your hatred and your anger, and not be confused about who you are. And what you're doing in your life and your responsibilities and all of your prior associations that we were talking about, I've addressed all them. And so it's a complete transformation of mind. And then they have no weaponry, being able to say, I'm not responsible for the version of me that exists in your mind. I'm responsible for me. And if you don't accept me, then that's okay. I don't expect 8 billion people in the world to accept me. That's fine.
That goes back to that original thing we're talking about in our first video, I think, is it makes you realize I'm not the worst thing in the world, and I'm certainly not the best thing in the world.
I come at this from a Buddhist perspective, but I have a whole mantra that that for me, going through my experience, I whittled everything down because my mantras changed. But for me in this current moment, this is my mantra. This is not an offense or a defense, just a direction. And I say, neither friend nor foe, like what you and I were talking about. So I set myself this, as soon as I get up in the morning, I'm talking as soon as my eyes open, I'm grabbing my mantra, and then I do the mantra Om Mani Padme Hung. I don't know do you know what Om Mani Padme Hung is?
No.
Om Mani Padme Hung is probably one of the most popular mantras in Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism. And it's a 6-syllable phrase, 4 words, Om Mani Padme Hung. So Om, I don't know, you've probably heard of Om before. Om. That's like that primordial sound, right? So that's our presence and our grounding. And then Mani is, that's actually representative of the jewel, like the jewel that's inside the lotus. And that's more representative of accessing the compassionate feeling heart. And then there's Padme, which is representative of the lotus, which is the unstained flower coming up out of the murky waters, this change in life that we take. All of it's the fertilizer that the crops grow out of. We have to start growing crops out of this fertilizer. So I look at my past life and everything that I've ever done as being like a field full of shit. And now I'm doing something more, right? And I'm utilizing that field of shit. I take that field of shit and I don't call it a field of shit. I call it fertilizer. It's nourishment. It's nutritious, and I'm growing crops with it, right? That's the lotus, and that's Padme. And then there's Hung, which is embracing the concept of non-duality, integrating opposites into the whole. This is our shadow work, right? So that, and that's in the, and you have to, if you really have a full understanding of what Om Mani Padme Hung is, it's actually considered to be all of the Buddhist teachings in one phrase. And it is said that this is a well-trodden path, frequency that a mind can tap into. And a Buddhist will say this 108 times over and over and over again. Om Mani Padme Hung, Om Mani Padme Hung, Om Mani Padme Hung, over and over and over again. I say it every single day. And I've been doing this for a long time now, a long time. So, and that's my go-to. Anytime I feel some sort of stress or just, distress in my mind, it's immediately my mind. It's just a trigger. Like I have triggers set up for their triggers. Like my mind kicks over Om Mani Padme Hung. And then boom, the full meaning of all of that comes into play. And then I'm reminded. So it's having a full understanding of the Om Mani Padme Hung and then doing a subconscious reprogramming of what that means and then having it set up as a trigger against this thing, whatever it is. Now, and then I go into the precepts. So I've undertaken the 5 Buddhist precepts, which are to refrain from killing or harming living beings. I refrain from taking what is not given, not stealing. I refrain from sexual misconduct. And sexual misconduct in Buddhism is very loose. I wouldn't say it's loose, but it's not like Christian, like you don't have to be married. It is consensual sex, and not with a minor. It says actually not with a minor, a person's wife, or even like a prisoner was one of the things. Like don't, for some reason that's a thing too. But it's just consensual sex between 2 people. And I've undertaken the precept to refrain from intoxicants that cause heedlessness. And then I do these things to ensure that my ripples are not the cause of suffering. And then I take full responsibility for all my karma. I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, related to my actions, supported by my actions. Whatever actions I do for good or for ill of that, I will be the heir. meaning that, whatever I do today, that's my responsibility. I don't care about this thing. What I do is I separate myself from it. I say, I don't care about this thing. What I do today falls on me. I'm the owner of my karma. If this thing wants to do something, that's its karma. That ain't my karma. I'm not responsible for somebody else's karma. In the end, when all things go through and I'm to be, go through a state of reincarnation according to my karma, that's going to be my karma, not this thing's karma that's trying to pass on to me or whatever. Right. So that's me. Now I take full responsibility for my actions. And I say this after I've already done my 5 precepts. And then I remind myself I'm going to die. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond death. All that is mine, dear and delightful, will change and vanish. And what this does is it reminds me of impermanence. All things change. Nothing lasts forever. The second that you're born, you're on your way to dying, right? So that you help to seize the day a little bit more, right? Yeah. So now so automatically just with that little bit, that's the first chunk of my daily mantra. And I do this 3 times a day, in the morning, in the afternoon, and the night. I've already set my presence. I've set my grounding, right? I've already declared neither friend nor foe. I have already declared that I am the owner of all my actions, and I've taken into responsibility that this day may end for me, so to seize the day for all that it is. And then I kind of just go into like what I wish for other people. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be free from measurement. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be happy. And then I say, with these truths, with these truths, there exist no problems, only the insinuation of problems. And with these truths, there exists no confusion, only the insinuation of confusion. If I am bothered by something, it will continue to bother me. If I am bolstered by something, it will continue to bolster me. And today I am grateful. So that right there is the heart of my daily mantra that I do every day. And that's my mind. That's my mindset. So at that point, it's like, what do the voices have to say? What can one of these voices possibly say that's going to, negate that? Yeah. What are you going to do? Yeah. What do you have? You have nothing. I've taken everything away from you. There's not one thing one of those voices can say that I don't already have as a rebuttal set up with the mantras that I do 3 times a day. Not one thing. Now, if they want to talk about philosophy or something like that, which is why they've gone deaf, like they've deafened out and they've dampened, and I hear some little chitter chatter in the background. But that's, I've molded my mind into the mantra, and then my expression of my life is an expression of my mind. And that's kind of how this whole experience has gone for me. Yeah.
I'd like to get your mantra list, your total, because I know you have a lot of them.
I do. I've gone through them, and this is what I've settled on. Yeah.
Yeah. Mantras and journaling. I think that mantras and journaling are both so, so important. And if you're not doing them, you got to get to doing them. And I'll tell you what, by the next time you and I talk, I will have mantras in my life. So. Good. It sounds awesome. I love it, man. I love your spirit, Kevin. I always do. You help me so much. Just the little text messages here and there, and getting to. I feel so lucky because there's all these targeted individual people or experiencers out there who would love to get to have more of your time, and I feel like I kind of have it available whenever, and I'm very blessed for that. So thank you.
See, I don't see that. I honestly don't see that at all. Like honestly, like I get to a point, I'm like, these people they're tired of hearing me talk. Like I really am to a point where I just want to back off from responding within a community because I struggle with fear. I still struggle with the fear of it not going a good direction. And that's a control thing with me. I need to really work on, Tony. Like I really need to but I'm afraid to let go of that. I'm afraid to not be there to enforce the direction that it's going. And then it's like, and then I have to put myself in check. Like, well, who the fuck are you to say that it should be going this direction? And really, that I struggle. I really struggle a lot with my own sense of what is right and my own intolerances and empathies. So this is what I've gotten into the habit of doing. If somebody posts something in the community that's like, helicopters are spraying my house with fumes and, I get that. I totally get that mentality. I've been there. But now years later, I look back and I'm like, good God, I can't believe I thought that and actually said that, So I won't let the post go through, but I will DM the person. I'll reach out to the person and I have a one-on-one time with them, just to kind of see where their head is at. I don't just delete it and let them hang. I always try to reach out. And even that becomes time consuming because now the community's growing and there's more of these kinds of, posts coming in. So I find myself having to reach out more and more and more. And what I'd really like to see happen is more people kind of come together like what we were talking about earlier, and start taking more of a responsibility for the people that are just coming in to this, because that's what's going to, that's what's going to keep this thing going. Is I rely heavily on the testimony of people that like yours and Alex, and Nil and Peter and James, those kind of people, even just stepping in once a day and giving their viewpoint from after years and years and years of experience with this and having it unfold.
I think that you deserve forgiveness for maybe being a little tied to expectations more than you want to be. Because I know that being tied to expectations is a quick way to end up disappointed and unhappy. But so when you do, you're just trying to guide people and help them not suffer as much you're just trying to ease suffering is all you're trying to do. And you're doing it in the best way that you've figured out. I think that the more that, like you said, our community can come together and start helping other people in the way that you and I are helping people, and see it as one of their main life goals is to help the other people who are going through this. And then we have a community. Is exactly what we said earlier. We need community more than anything, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I want you to know that, like, I really respect what you're doing, and I'm glad that you speak out, and I'm glad that you're able to be humble enough. Maybe that's the main thing that people are confused about, is that they don't realize that you're humble enough to go, "Oh yeah, I don't know all the answers. I'm just giving you the best answers I have."
All right, we'll talk about the technology thing, for a second. And one of the main, and I discussed this in the last podcast, one of the rules in that community is less technology, more psychology. And, the communities that have been started are very, I guess, psycho-spiritual is a good way to put it. And it's not that I am opposed to the technological discussion. I am opposed to the technological discussion as an explanation, not being used as examination. There's a big difference in my head. When you use technology to examine something, I want to use the current technological narrative to help try to explain this thing that's happening. As opposed to, I'm sorry, not to explain this thing that's happening, but to try to understand this thing that's happening. Okay. As opposed to, I want to use the current technological advancement that are at my disposal to explain this thing that is happening. Because now what you're doing is you're negating thousands of years of reported phenomena of the same exact thing.
That's exactly right.
Did you know that when electricity first came out, right? When it started getting popular, especially in Europe, all of a sudden the psych wards filled up with people that said that they were being attacked by what they referred to as the electricians, right? And they described the same exact thing that we experience. They felt like they were being physically violated. They felt like they had electromagnet, some sort of a magnetic fluid, they referred to it as, going through their bodies. They heard voices that were saying all these crazy, violent things to them and perverse things. And the beds were vibrating. Their bodies were vibrating. Like they felt that they were being put there and that all the doctors were against them. Like this happens. This has been happening for a long time. And everybody's been explaining it with the best that they can, with the understanding that they have given the time frame and the demographic. And we still have the same thing. So I'm not opposed to using technology labels and technology terminology to try to understand this. But to say that to use it as your explanation wholly, you're denying yourself of further examination of the phenomena throughout history. And that's where we find a lot of healing in the community, when people's eyes open up and all of a sudden they go, oh shit, this really? Like, oh, I didn't know that. And the whole relationship changes. A lot of fears go away. A lot of openness comes up to more spiritual Eastern practices, and people start relying more on God and seeking out a higher power. And we see all these great changes, and then people start healing better. Because as long as you think it's your government that's doing this, well, now all of a sudden your government is God, right? And I wrote something down the other day. People need to think higher than the fear that pretends to govern them. That's what we're trying to do in that community. I'm trying to get people to think higher than the fear that pretends to govern them, right? Because a lot of this thing that we go through, it's pretentious as shit. It's not what it says it is. It never is. And what that does is it forces you to move through your fears and continue to go higher and upward and, seek out other avenues and, and to go back in time.
And if you discount those two things, the history of the phenomenon, right? Then, and in my opinion, I know I've mentioned it a lot today, but I think if you discount synchronicity, which is also a history of the phenomenon situation, but if you discount the history, then you are going to lock yourself into thinking, because once you see that, like you're saying, once you see that history, it frees you up from having to believe that it is new age technology problems, right?
It was amazing. So one of the first visual experiences that I had, and if anybody else is watching this and you've had the same thing happen to you, then put it in the comments. My entire field of vision looked like measles. Like there was little red dots with black holes in the middle everywhere, right? That's all. It covered everything. And then and it was like that. And that only happened, I would say, once or twice. It looked like measles, right?
Right.
And that was like, I want to say the first or second night that I had 24/7 voices. Okay. And then I didn't have it again. Well, I'm talking to a woman on Hearing Voices Network about 3 months ago. And she brings up and she said, man, she goes, I used to get it when I was younger and it looked like measles. And I said, no shit. And I reached out to her and I said, yeah, I've had that too. And then I'm thinking in my head, all right, so this was like 2 years ago for me that I experienced that. And then I said, well, how long ago was it that this woman experienced that? So I asked her, 30 years ago was when she experienced that. 30 years ago. So then you got to start thinking, okay, at the rate the technology is advancing now, would they still be using the same technology 30 years ago? Think about 30 years ago. There wasn't even beepers out yet. There wasn't laptops. Nothing was out 30 years ago. I had Nintendo 30 years ago.
The only cell phones were the size of a briefcase.
Yeah, they were huge. My parents had one in their Ford Aerostar. It was like this big. Yeah. It was giant. Yeah, you had to go stand on top of a hill to get a signal. It was crazy.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So then you're thinking like, all right, if this is like some sort of human technology, they're still using the same shit from 30 years ago. Like they haven't advanced their yet. Like, yeah. No, like there's something much deeper, much more at a consciousness level, and much more outside the constructs of past, present, and future that is happening here. And I've had a lot of experience that completely demolished my thinking towards past, present, and future as if it doesn't exist. And it kind of goes back to how everything exists as a concept in our heads, that can be revisited. In my head, I can close my eyes and think about a memory of when I was 5 in great vivid detail as if it's occurring right now and relive that memory, and the emotion of it. And if you can look at it like that, well, that past is now brought up and I'm sharing it with you and you're experiencing my past from 40 years ago in this current moment in time I'm sharing, so it's as if everything kind of flows together, but it all exists as a concept in our minds. But from a technological level, to think that the same technology 30 years ago is being used now. And then when we look at all these reported cases from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, people hearing voices and ambient noise doing the same exact thing. Well, then you have to like, really? Like this isn't, so there's something, in my opinion, much deeper at a collective consciousness level that is occurring. And the fact that I can hear my own voice intertwined with ambient noise as well. And that doesn't mean that my voice is actually outside of myself. It just means that it's intertwining with the ambient noise in my head, along with the other voices. And who's to say what the hell consciousness is and what that's entangled with and where that goes? So is that just some data stream it's just some data stream of downloads and inputs that can go, in and out. And, I think I shared this experience with you. It was about 3 weeks ago. I'm sitting at work during my lunch break and, I was just kind of sitting there and I closed my eyes for a second. Then all of a sudden I sense my daughter, my 18-month-old daughter, and I see her head in blue and it comes and it touches my head and I feel it with a vibratory touch my head. And I knew it was her. Like I just know it's her. Right. And then boom, it went away. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, that love that you have for your daughter, I was overcome with it. Next thing you know, my girlfriend calls me and she says, Lucy's having a complete conniption fit and she's out of control. I cannot control her. I don't know what's going on with her right now. She's out of control. That was I connected with my daughter's consciousness. You know what I mean? So there is this thing that connects us all together, you know, and these family bonds that we have that are very strong with one another. So, and I don't negate that fact when I take all of this into account. Right. There's so much more going on here than meets the eye, than our fear decides for us and our paranoias tell us. Once you can push past the fear and the paranoia and kind of come into a place of love and acceptance and get rid of that hatred and that anger and that feeling of disappointment and confusion and anxiety and all of that, and really start to mold yourself into a groove of love and seeing everybody else as yourself and everybody else as yourself. And the experience does, you know, it does change. And Tony, I pray for you. I pray for you daily. I think about you constantly. You are always on my mind. You're always in my head. You're always in my heart. And my thoughts go out to you always, and other people that are suffering at the level that you are. I'm thankful that you were here, that you were doing this with me, and you are an amazing contribution to all of this. And God bless you for everything that you do.
I appreciate you so much, and no one knows how hard you work, and I appreciate your hard work. I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of sleepless nights, man. You know, the last word I want to say on this to the audience is Kevin says, live in love as much as you can, but in honesty, right? With an honest love, not an overly in the false light, as some people call it. But living in love does not mean it will fix it, maybe. But I have lived for the last decade. I've lived in a lot of different places. I've lived in anger, and I've lived in thinking that I was completely worthless and self-hatred. And then I've lived in trying to be balanced and see that I'm not the worst or best person in the world. And I can tell you, through all the different personalities that I've had to put on, hats that I've had to wear during the last 10 years, even if love doesn't fix it, it's the best answer.
Yeah,
in my opinion. So
we come into the world with two things I've whittled it down to, and one of those things is an inherent state of confusion that we don't know what the hell we're doing here. We don't have any real explanation for why we exist. You know, I mean, if somebody can give us an explanation or impart some sort of dogmatic view onto us, an existential explanation. But for the most part, we don't really know why we humans are here. You know, is it just evolution? How did the earth get here? Is it all just happening? Is it all in our minds? Like, is everything, does it only exist because I observe, and that's, an inherent state of confusion. And the other thing is we need love. As soon as we come out of the womb, I need somebody to nurture me. I need somebody to love me. I need somebody to take care of me and comfort me and feed me. I need somebody to give me affection. I need kindness and gentleness and patience, and comfort. I need those things. So, those two things, if you can really look at it deeply, we don't know what the hell we're doing here, but we know that we need love. That's what it means to be a human. Really, it really is. If you can look at those two things, and nobody is immune to that. Nobody's immune to that equation. I don't care if you're Donald Trump, or I don't care if you're the guy down my street corner asking people for change. I don't care who you are. Nobody is immune to that equation. You are inherently confused and you need love. That's it. Those two things, you've really got to go back with this experience and figure out what's what. What is the truth that is going on here? I don't know what's going on, but I know I need love. Right? So let me focus on the love and accept my inherent state of confusion, because these things like to toy with that inherent state of confusion big time. That's like a foundation for what they mess with you with. If they can keep you confused, they can keep you angry. Right? But if you can embrace your confusion as a gift and say, well, thank God I'm confused, right? Because now I get to choose. What is truth? That's up to me, right? Confusion's a beautiful gift if you think about it. As a human being, I am inherently confused. Therefore, I can never really be wrong with what I choose to be truthful, because I can never really be right either, can I? Right. So it's up to me. I have that freedom as a human being that's inherently confused to pick whatever the hell truth I want and roll with that. What kind of truth do I want? Just make sure it revolves around what you need most, which is love.
Excellent job. Thank you, Kevin, for the discussion. Sorry to keep you over, man.
Love you, buddy.